Hey everyone, it's Konrad Bobilak here, CEO of Investors Prime Real Estate and author of Australian Property Finance Made Simple. And welcome to today's video. I've made a video about COVID-19 or coronavirus because I've had so many inquiries coming through via email, people calling me up, wanting to know what I think about the virus in terms of its impact on the economy, on the property market, its impact on capital growth potential of different areas. So after getting a lot of emails, and the reason I haven't done a video earlier on because I was waiting for RP data to really come out with the March figures. See, in real estate investing, we're always looking back at data, and the best data that we have is around 2 to 3 months old. So the reality is we don't even know where we are right now until about June, July, when all the figures come in, and then we'll be looking back at, March and April going, oh, that's where the market was back then. There are other indicators that I'll cover today that give you kind of an indication of where people are in terms of the psychology, the consumer sentiment, etc. But I want to cover it not from a medical perspective because I'm definitely not qualified to talk to you about the virus from a medical perspective or when the vaccine will be, in effect, and also what's going to happen in different countries, whether we're going to plateau or whether the curve is going to go up again, especially with the flu season around the corner. I believe personally, don't hold me to it. Once again, I'm not qualified to give you that information, but I believe when the flu season hits, I think there's going to be another curve, the second wave of people that will be getting the coronavirus combined with the flu virus. So there could be a further negative impact on people and the economy and the employment. But anyway, I want to stick to just the property market in Melbourne because that's what I'm an expert on, and I want to share some ideas with you today. For those of you who are thinking of investing, maybe you're sitting on the sidelines, I want to share some ideas with you about what successful investors think of the market right now and what very wealthy developers are doing right now. Because some of the things that are happening right now with successful investors and developers might surprise you. So welcome to today's video. Before we get started, a bit of a personal disclaimer. My results are untypical. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by promising or implying in any way, shape or form that you're going to build a multi-million-dollar property portfolio like I have, but I'm going to show you exactly what's worked for me and give you some pointers and strategies that I have implemented and my clients are implementing. And if you find that you resonate with any of these strategies, by all means implement them at your own risk. In life, there is no guarantee of anything. The only guarantee is that you're responsible for your wealth and ultimately you're the only person that's going to make you wealthy. For those who have never heard me speak before, my name is Konrad Bobilak. My background in terms of my traditional education, I've wasted 4 years at Monash University doing a business degree, nearly did an MBA, more bad advice, but I thought I'd pull the pin and try to make some real money and actually leave that world. I got into financial planning with Australian New Funds Management. So my background is financial planning and banking predominantly. In the last 7 years, I've been involved in real estate as well. I'm a real estate agent. I've also have a diploma of financial services in mortgage broking. So I spent years as a mortgage broker, both residential and commercial lending. I worked for NAB in residential lending and a company called Medfin, which was taken over by NAB, which was a lending specialist. I was setting up medical clinics and dental clinics around Melbourne and doing stuff like extensions in hospitals and radiology equipment, asset finance, all kind of stuff. Also, the most important thing is that, and this is the only reason why I'm qualified to talk to you today, is because I'm a property investor. Right now, I'm buying properties in Melbourne, and that's really the only qualifications I need. Remember, you can have all the letters after your name, but the most important thing is the zeros in your bank account, or the numbers in your bank account, I should say. I'm also the author of Australian Property Finance Made Simple, has just gone bestseller last year, and I've also just completed my second book, which will be out mid this year. I'm just going through a very painful process of getting it edited right now and laid out. So that's a whole process right now. So I'm really excited about that. If you want to grab a copy of this book, just go to bookonfinance.com.au. Let's get into coronavirus. Australia's doing quite well, apparently. As you can see, that compared to other countries, we've kind of plateaued. So the restrictions that have been imposed by the government in terms of physical isolation of everyone have definitely worked, you know, even though that we had a couple of hiccups, and obviously you guys watch the news every day. I'm not going to go through this information with you because we all know the same information about where we are. And the reality is I've got about 60 clients of mine that are doctors, specialists, biochemists, and they have no idea where we're going to go from here onwards. So no one really knows. If they don't know, I'm definitely not going to be the person giving you that information because no one knows what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. The thing that's definitely going to happen is this thing will pass. That's the definite thing that's going to happen. Like the GFC, like all the other crises that we've had, this too shall pass. And I guarantee you, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you'll be looking back at this opportunity right now thinking, man, I wish I bought property in 2020 because the fundamentals have never changed. Fundamentals are exactly the same in Melbourne as they were 12 months ago when the market was going into an upward trending growth. In fact, Melbourne did 12 to 14% last year, which is really good. 8 o'clock on the property clock going up to a growth, and then we've had to pause the economy momentarily. So really, you know, in terms of what's happening right now, the biggest thing that it's had a very negative impact on consumer sentiment, which is how people generally feel about what's happening in the marketplace. And generally speaking, you know, people are definitely concerned about the economy. Thousands of people have lost their jobs in Australia, and I feel very sorry for those families. And by no way am I here to diminish the impact of coronavirus, the significance of that coronavirus on their lives. This is not what I'm doing today at all. I think that people have been hit hard. I know people that have lost both jobs and they've got mortgage payments and everything else. Now, definitely the government has come to the party with a lot of incentives, which I'm not going to cover in this video because that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to talk about the property market. But definitely people are very negative as they were during the GFC. And for me as a personal, you know, strategy is I always practice counter-cyclical investing. I always look at what people are doing and I do the exact opposite. Warren Buffett says, this is my favorite quote. You would have seen this quote over and over in my various videos and webinars and home study. I'll tell you how to become rich. Close the doors. Be fearful when others are greedy. Be greedy when others are fearful. Right now is the time to be greedy if you can, because so many people are fearful. And I'll talk about the different segments in Melbourne because there is no such thing as the Melbourne property market either. There's 8 distinctive markets. But in specific markets right now, it is the time to become greedy because you can make $100,000, $200,000 off a brand new townhouse if you're smart enough to know how to get access to it. And I'm going to share with you at the end of this video some properties that I've been offered that are being fire sold right now in some blue chip areas. They won't last. And once this passes, those deals will be gone forever like they were in 2008 during the GFC. So it all comes down to your paradigms, your belief systems. And right now, if you're listening to this video on YouTube, if you're feeling concerned about the property market, if you're scared and you're not going to invest, that's exactly what you should be feeling based on your current knowledge base. So your level of knowledge will determine your outcome, right? So if you have very little knowledge and you're operating from a space of no knowledge virtually, let's say in the property investing arena, that equates to 1,000 hours of exposure. 1,000 hours of knowledge is nothing. All that creates is a little bit of knowledge and a massive amount of uncertainty. So whatever you're feeling right now is absolutely normal for you to feel at this moment in time based on how much experience and knowledge and time you've invested in educating yourself about the market. If you're feeling excited about the market, that's a very normal thing for you to feel because obviously you spend hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours, researching the property market. So whatever you're feeling right now is exactly what you should be feeling. If you're scared, you should be scared because you don't know anything about investing. So see, to me, if someone doesn't know anything about a topic and then they invest, that's a crazy person because that person's operating from no knowledge, yet they want to invest. It's almost like, I want to lose money. You know, that really scares me. People that have no knowledge and they operate from a lack of knowledge, but they want to jump into something. They're crazy people, okay? So I'm not a crazy person. I'm very conservative. So I break it down into hours of exposure, okay? If you have 1,000 hours of exposure, which is stuff all, a couple of articles, a few books here and there, watch a couple of videos, you should be completely paralyzed with fear right now, sitting at home watching Netflix, eating Maltesers. Perfectly normal, if you have, that's 1,000 hours, okay? If you have, or less than 1,000 hours as well, okay? If you have between 3,000 to 5,000 hours of exposure, so you've been to boot camps, we've read maybe 10, 15 books on property, you've watched dozens of videos on YouTube, you should have a feeling that you're excited, there could be opportunities, you know this thing will pass, but you're not quite sure what to do and how to get the team together. Okay, so you need guidance, but you're kind of this could be an opportunity. This could be a stock take sale. This could be, you know, the end of the year stock take sale. This could be bargains out there maybe, but I'm not quite sure what to do. And that's a really great place to be. And then you just got to find the right people to help you get through that phase. If you've got 10,000 hours plus of exposure, now 10,000 hours is what I've personally observed you need as a minimum to be completely in the space, untouchable by the media. I know exactly what to do in my paradigms, which means you know exactly what to do. You know how finance works. You've probably read 30, 40 books on real estate. You've probably been to about 10 seminars or workshops. You've probably watched hundreds of videos on real estate investing like I have, read countless articles, spoken to other successful investors. You got your team together and you know exactly what to do. And that's an exciting place to be. Now remember, the only person that's responsible for your knowledge base at this point in time is you, okay? Because you've got a choice whether you watch MasterChef or Married at First Sight or educate yourself on property investing. No one's putting a gun to your head every night and forcing you to watch Netflix or Married at First Sight. It's your choice how you spend your time. And remember, we've all got the same amount of time to spend. It's a very fair system. Rich people just choose to do different things with their time compared to the average person. Rich people do not watch TV, they read books and they spend time researching their chosen area of investing. They get obsessed with it, literally. So that's why I don't watch any TV. I watch movies, but I don't watch any TV. I don't watch anything to do with, network TV by choice. And I'm super comfortable with my decision. So if you want to engage in a conversation about, MasterChef or Biggest Loser or whatever is on, Google Box, I have no idea what those shows are. I've never seen them. I've seen glimpses of them maybe advertised on the internet somewhere. That's why I've read over 250 books on real estate investing, and that's why I am financially right now in a very comfortable place with a lot of equity. And think about this moment in time as well. If you haven't got real estate behind you, if you're renting and if you've been working for more than 10 years, you could have easily got into the property market, even on minimum wage. Imagine you had a townhouse today, and forget about high incomes. Let's just say 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, you bought a 3-bedroom townhouse in Cranbourne North for $320,000. And today it's worth $500,000. And you could access $100,000 in equity right now in your property. How much safety would you have right now knowing that you've got $100,000 you can grab and take out and spend on your life, on mortgages, on food, whatever it is? How much more confidence would you have about even if you lost your job, you've got $100,000 you can access at any time. And that's what property gives you. It gives you options. Not to have property, to me, is the biggest risk ever. So your paradigms are your belief systems around property investing. And whatever you're feeling right now is exactly in line what your paradigms are, and you've chosen your paradigms and you choose your paradigm system. Your paradigm system is like software. You got your hardware and you got your software. So if your software is serving you correctly right now, which means you've got a large property portfolio with passive income, fantastic, just keep building on top of it. But if you're at the moment feeling uncertainty about the market and feeling like the market's going to collapse, wrong time to invest, your paradigms need to be replaced, because I can guarantee you right now, 2 years from now, if you're watching this video, we're going to be past the coronavirus, just like we passed the mad cow disease, SARS, all the other viruses we've had in the past. And the market's going to continue to go up because of population growth and because of the fundamentals that are driving the Melbourne property market. Now, definitely the impact has been pretty much significant in terms of the Australian Stock Exchange. It pretty much plummeted, and it's going down at a very fast rate because it's an investment market. It's controlled by mum and dad investors and institutional investors. So we've seen the market plummet, 18%, 15% in a week or two. The property market, though, is much more complex because the property market is not an investment market. 70% of houses are not purchased by investors with the notion of speculating to make money. They're actually what I call a necessities market. People live in houses because they need shelter. So remember, the biggest thing you've got to understand about the property market, it's not an investment market. It's not an investment market. It is not a market driven by investors. It is driven by owner-occupiers. It's an emotional thing that we do by living in houses and apartments and townhouses. And this is why it's not as volatile with the stock market, because it's not driven by speculation, fear and greed. And also it's pretty much illiquid. You need 3-4 months to sell a property. It's not just pressing a button on CommSec and dumping your BHP shares. You know, it's much more complex than that. In terms of where we are in the property market, we can see there, and this is the long-term trend, we definitely are going down in the median prices, and I'll talk about the different segments in Melbourne which are going to be affected and which aren't going to be affected at all. But if you group all the suburbs in Melbourne, there's about 460 suburbs in Melbourne. If you group them all together, so that's right, you put St Albans together with Toorak, which I don't know what kind of sense that would be. I mean, there's 8 distinctive markets in Melbourne, but if you group all of them together, definitely the median price is going to go down, absolutely. And I'll talk about where I believe the median price will end up in the next 12 months based on what's currently happening. The government has definitely stepped in, and because we've paused the economy, the economy hasn't broken like it has during the GFC. We've paused the economy and people were forced to go home, basically, you know, and stay at home. Because of that, there's been a lot of compensation packages that have been released to stabilise the economy during this pausing period of time. And we know that, you know, we approximately at the moment in April, the stimulus packages have totaled 331.6 billion, which is about 16.6% of our GDP. And you can see that you've got the stimulus packages both by you know, the federal government and state governments as well. So there's a lot of money being poured into every state and different levels of businesses in order to make this transition as smooth as possible. Now, we know this 12 months is going to be a write-off economically. Even banks have come to the party. You can pause your mortgage for 6 months and, you know, capitalise the interest. And this is some of the money that's been spent around the country. You know, in Victoria, we've got 1.7 billion, New South Wales, 3.3 billion. Obviously, it's a much bigger market up there. ACT, 337 million. Tassie, 985 million. You know, Queensland, 4 billion. 1 billion in South Australia. NT, 115 million. And then 1.6 billion WA. So we're definitely doing the right thing. We should be pouring as much money as possible, supplementing every family that has lost their job because they didn't do it by choice. They were forced to go home and stay at home for the greater good, which is to minimise the death toll, which is exactly what we're doing. The Reserve Bank of Australia as well has really come to the party by lowering interest rates. And we're really at the moment, I mean, we're in unprecedented territory. They've only got 0.25% to go before the interest rate is zero. I can guarantee you one thing, the banks in Australia will never allow this standard variable rate to go to zero or negative. They don't need to, okay? Just because they're doing it in other countries doesn't mean we're going to do it here. The banks here want to make a profit, and it's healthier for them to charge an interest rate as well. So I don't believe the banks are going to lower that to zero. But look, where we are currently turns virtually every blue chip property into cash flow neutral positive, depending on your income after negative gearing, which is really the easiest time to buy a property. If you're looking at Elwood or Port Melbourne or Williamstown, you can buy a 3-bedroom townhouse and have it cash flow positive from day one. I mean, it's crazy. You know, like when I think about it, when I was back at NAB and Medfield, I was doing lending at 7-8%. You know, then you had a gap of 4% that you had to negative gear. Now you're getting lending at 3%. Your rental yield is 3.5. I mean, guys, it's a no-brainer. You know, the tenant is paying for the property. I mean, this is as good as it gets. I mean, have a look at it from here down, all the way down. Interest rates are going to continue to stay low for a long time. I don't think there's any pressure on inflation for interest rates to go up, and unemployment's going up. I mean, it's already 11-12%. You know, technically, if you count all the families and all the people that were told to go home basically and stay in isolation, I reckon we're already at 15-16%. But various government stimulation packages and payments have ensured that a lot of those people are getting paid and are staying on the books of their employers, which is the right thing to do, you know, from a economic perspective. But definitely, look, where we are currently, I mean, I'm excited about what's happening. I'm seeing my portfolio getting refinanced virtually every 2 months. I'm refinancing something, and I'm refinancing, you know, a lot. First of all, my whole portfolio is virtually variable rates. There's only a few times that I've ever fixed my rates, but whenever I'm refinancing, I'm getting cheaper and cheaper rates every single time. It's just, I mean, the amount of cash flow that I'm getting from my portfolio is crazy. You know, I feel such gratitude that I've chosen this path, especially when it's the uncertainty right now that we're facing as a nation. One thing I want to talk to you about is, if you're looking at Melbourne, let's talk about which areas are going to be impacted the most economically and which areas are going to be left pretty much unimpacted completely. And remember, in Melbourne, there's 8 distinctive markets, and each market has a clustering effect of demographics. So there isn't such a thing as Melbourne, okay? Remember, Melbourne is Toorak 8 million, St Albans 700,000. There's no correlation between those two suburbs. So you've got to look at distinctive areas of Melbourne. You've got to look at how demographics are clustered. Different people living in different areas with different incomes, working in different industries. So we've got to break down into which industries are going to be smashed and impacted the most by the coronavirus, and which industries are actually going to be booming. Because there are industries right now that are actually booming. People making more money in those industries than ever. So don't think that everyone's in the same boat. So as an investor, you've got to be very discerning. You've got to go down into micro level, niche, deep, and look at the market at the property level, not at the macro level, which everyone talks about. Macro level being median prices down 10%. Who cares? You know, there's tens of thousands of houses on the market every weekend. You only got to choose one, right one. So how do you choose the best property? So this is IBISWorld, which is basically a consulting firm, a research house, if you like. They do consultancy for governments, for fund managers. And they have created a really good report which talks about the economic assessment and the impact of COVID-19 on the Australian industries, various industries, and what the impact will be. So let's look at the likely impact on different industries and which ones are affected, which ones are moderately affected, which ones are not affected, and then look at where are those people living in which areas and what is it going to do to supply and demand in those areas. So if you look at agriculture, fishing and forestry, that's definitely going to have a high impact in terms of what the industry and in terms of people's basically being forced to stay home. There could be someone could get sick in a factory and the whole thing shuts down, which has happened very frequently. And so these are areas. These are definitely aquaculture low, forestry and logging high, fishing, hunting and trapping high, and then forestry and fishing support services low. In terms of mining, which is predominantly your WA and then you've got your Queensland Surat Basin, they're high to moderate. There's a lot of mining companies still operating. A lot of third world countries and emerging economies are buying commodities from Australia. Our dollar is very competitive at the moment on the economic exchange markets. So people are getting commodities at a very good price. But definitely it depends on what they're exporting, whether it's oil, whether it's coal, whether it's gas. Coal mining, for example, oil and gas extraction, very high impact. I mean, oil has plummeted now. Was it $22 per barrel? Where really it needs to be around the $80 mark to make it economically viable for a lot of countries. So metal or mining is moderate. Non-metallic minerals and moderate, and exploration is moderately affected as well. If you're looking at manufacturing, manufacturing definitely has been impacted. Food, product manufacturing, beverage manufacturing, especially companies that are relying on imports of other ingredients from other countries have been impacted to a large extent. Printing, petroleum and coal product manufacturing low, and then you have basic chemicals and manufacturing high. And then you've got, so a lot of different areas here have a moderate to low impact. If you're looking at electricity, gas, water, waste services, definitely low because people still need to use those services. So that sector is not going to be impacted a lot. And a lot of them are government bodies and that sector is pretty much based on making sure that we continue to function as a society. Construction has a low impact. and which is great. I believe construction workers need to be on site working and creating new property solutions. If they don't, it's going to put more pressure on the housing market than ever. So I think the government is doing the right thing by allowing a lot of construction workers to operate. A lot of projects need to be completed. I mean, we've got, in Melbourne, we've got 100,000 people coming to the city every year, and we're not producing anywhere near that in terms of property solutions. We're about short 15 to 20,000 houses, per year. So, we've got to make sure that industry is working around the clock. I would definitely consider this an essential service industry. Wholesale trade has been affected high to moderately. Definitely, if you look at retail is decimated anyway in Australia. I mean, people are buying everything online now. You look at retail shops, they're closing down everywhere. There are vacancies. I've seen shops vacant for a year or two now in Chapel Street, in Harbour Town, in the shopping centres. So retail is dying completely. People are savvy. With the safety of transacting online now, people are going online. I buy everything online now. I don't even bother going to shops. I might go to a shop to try things on and then just go online and just buy the stuff and get it delivered to my house. Why pay another $100, $200 for the same piece of clothing and get it online for half the price? So retail trade is dead long term. The biggest thing that's been affected really is accommodation and travel and tourism and the airline industry. I mean, they've been completely shut down to the point where they're non-existent. So definitely anything to do with accommodation, hotels, food and beverage services, also transport and warehousing has had a high impact as well. Definitely that's something that that I think will recover eventually very quickly, because it's a necessity which we are relying on to make sure we're getting all our goods and services. Definitely, it's a very important part of the economy. Information, media and telecommunications, somewhat, depending on what it is. I mean, print media is pretty much dead, but there's a lot of stuff now like broadcasting, internet publishing. Everyone's using Zoom now, working from home. So those industries have just boomed. I mean, the owner of Zoom has made, $4 billion this year, just out of that one service. So it's a mixed bag. Finance and banking hasn't been affected at all. And this is one of the biggest and most important sectors in our economy. The biggest single contributor towards our GDP is the banking financial services sector. And this is why this time around, during this crisis, if you like, for lack of better words, our banking system is intact. It's very profitable. It's very discerning who it's lending money to, but it's actually making a profit, and that's very important to stabilise the economy. During the GFC, I was very concerned. The moment that Lehman Brothers fell, I was then trading options. I was in various chat rooms, and everyone was saying, it's not going to fall. They're going to get bailed out. They can't allow Lehman Brothers to fall. And then when they fell, there was a moment there in 2008 where I started to question everything that I knew, because I thought, shit, if they fell, everyone can fall. This is Lehman Brothers. This is one of the biggest, oldest banking financial institutions in America. This is old Wall Street money. So then I got really concerned about, what's going to happen in the future? And then when Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae were insolvent and they got bailed out, I was reassured once again that this is too big to fail. So the banking and financial services sector is the backbone of the economy. If that fails, the currency collapses. I mean, it'll be chaos, basically. So the thing why I think this time around the recovery will be very quick and smooth is because the banking financial services sector is largely unaffected. People are working from home. Everything's on laptops now, on phones. I mean, you're as efficient and probably more efficient working from home than you are in an office, because you don't have to fight traffic every day and waste 2 hours of your life getting there, and then having coffees and wasting all the time getting lunch and everything else. I mean, I'm actually doing more work at home than I ever do in the office. There's too many distractions in my office. People just want to talk to me all the time. So I think with a lot of industries like banking, financial services sector, accounting firms, marketing firms, legal firms, those architectural firms, they really haven't been disrupted at all. Those people are actually working and as productive as ever. Yes, maybe the clientele has been diminished or the client needs have switched, but in terms of productivity and wages, it's not an area that's been affected a lot by this coronavirus. So anything to do with real estate services, rental and hiring services, low impact. Property operators, real estate services, very low. Professional, scientific, technical services, very low impact. In fact, a lot of labs, a lot of biochemistry companies, biotech companies are booming at the moment because they're producing services and products that we need to function in this virus. Administrative and support services, also very low. Defence, very low impact. Preschools and education centres, moderate. Some schools have shut down. Some are operating on skeleton crews. Some are operating and just educating like nothing's happened. Tertiary education is virtually shut down completely. Not only that, because we've had, like for example, Monash University, there are empty classrooms because obviously we've shut down any travel into Australia. So a lot of students from Asia could not start the semester this year. So they've been massively impacted. But other education has a low impact. A lot of it's online now. Nothing's really changed. Hospitals, I would say a lot of hospitals, except for residential care services, they had a high impact. But hospitals haven't been affected a lot. In fact, a lot of people working huge hours overtime. I know a lot of nurses that are my clients, and they pretty much can work whatever they want. They could work 24 hours a day. Arts and recreational services have been impacted to some extent as well. And then we've got personal services as well. The biggest thing that's really shut down in Melbourne is the airport, Tullamarine Airport, and everything to do with the airport industry. So travel, hospitality, the tourism industry has been impacted. Anything to do with live events, everything's been shut down completely. Where if you look at things that are booming, so things like services that are predominantly around accounting, finance, banking and financial services sector, they're actually doing quite well. So we have different impacts on different segments of our economy. And you've got to look at those things objectively, because when you're investing in property, if you're thinking of buying right now, there's only certain areas that I would recommend you look at. And you've got to know the implications of how to find this data for yourself and how to make sure this is all accurate. Don't just take my word for it. If you look at food accommodation have been hit the hardest in the economy. I mean, people in hospitality, basically 70% of the workforce have no jobs. So if you look at the areas geographically that are relying very heavily on that industry, Sydney in the west, 11.7% of people there are employed in accommodation and food services. Sunshine Coast, I mean, you look at Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, it's predominantly just tourism and hospitality. I mean, there's no fundamentals there. There's no heads of corporations. Yes, you have some small businesses there, some small accounting, banking, financial services sector, but really it's all just tourist-reliant industries. So Gold Coast especially, 10.6%. And remember, there's a flow-on effect. If you shut down 10.6% of the workforce, there's a flow-on effect of other companies that will rely on that 10% to function as well. So shutting down 10% of a area that has 10% of the workforce in an industry could have an impact on 20 or 30% of the workforce in an industry. There's a flow-on effect, definitely. So if you look at all the different things, different areas which are heavily in accommodation and food services, here's a bit of a table for you. But it's predominantly, Melbourne's which not even mentioned here, it's pretty much regional and holiday type destinations. So which suburbs in Melbourne will be severely impacted by COVID-19? I mean, this is the million-dollar question. Let's have a look at how Melbourne is structured, first of all, because Melbourne is very complex in terms of its structure. It's a very fragmented city with different people doing different things. And there is no correlation between different parts of Melbourne. So many people are surprised to learn that nearly 3/4 of the jobs in Melbourne are located more than 5 kilometres of the central business district. The biggest mistake people make is believe that everyone works in the city. They don't, okay? They don't. In fact, the most important part of our job sector, the highest income earners, don't work in the city at all. They don't want to work in the city, and they don't work in the city. So 3/4 of people do not work in the city, which means only 25% of people work in the city, in the central business district in Melbourne. Another surprise is only 20% of those suburban jobs are located in medium to large activity centres. So only 20% of the 75 are located in business activity centres, which I'll show you where they are. And this is where the biggest job hubs are in Melbourne. You can see that one of the biggest ones is Centrelink Airport. And then you've got manufacturing and firms and definitely hubs, major employment hubs. And then you've got Clayton is huge in terms of heavy industry and plus manufacturing and white collar jobs as well. But you can see there's a sprinkling effect throughout Melbourne. So basically 75% of jobs are not in the city and they are sprinkled throughout Melbourne job hubs. But there's different categories of jobs that are concentrated in these hubs. So for example, if you look at, if you were to take Q, for example, majority of the jobs in Q are white collar, upper market jobs, accounting firms, legal firms, banking, financial services sector, marketing. If you look at Centrelink Airport, it's all blue collar jobs. Okay, so obviously they're going to be impacted differently compared to other parts of the city. So if you have all manufacturing shutting down here, plus the airport is shut down, and then the airport has a lot of businesses around the airport that function on the basis that the airport is working, what impact would it have on people that have bought brand new houses in house and land estates in this part of Melbourne, if they're all working in these sectors? And in fact, 80% of people in here work in the city or they work in these business parks, which is very interesting. Here, you have predominantly white-collar workers, and these parts of the economy have been impacted. Yes, there are exceptions. I'm sure there's people losing money in Toorak and Brighton, but I'm saying if you look at the statistical makeup of the demographics of a suburb, if you have 85% of people in a suburb like Brighton working in white-collar jobs, and then you have, for example, Melton, we have 60% of people working in blue-collar jobs. There's a very different impact on Melton versus Brighton. The other 80% are sprinkled throughout the residential areas in standalone developments, rather they're mostly located in relatively small centres. And these are the areas that they're located in. You can see that Clayton's got a big chunk, 20%. Centrelink, Kew, Hawthorn, Box Hill, St Kilda, Moorabbin, Heidelberg. Malvern, Bayswater, Dandenong, Footscray, Glenwaverley, Frankston, Glen Iris, Malvern East, Cheltenham High, Ringwood, Montana South, Moonee Ponds, La Trobe University, Narre Warren, Burwood, Oakley, Greensborough, Broadmeadows, Blackburn, Heath, Mont Sunshine, Preston, Northland. So people in these areas predominantly work in these job hubs. They don't actually travel to the city. So then you've got to work out, well, what jobs are they doing? Are those jobs being impacted? Meaning, what's the probability of a person, for example, living in Glenwaverley, of retaining their job or having the ability to work from home? Because if you're working in the banking financial service sector, if you're a mortgage broker, you can work just efficiently from home as you can from the office. If you're doing coding, if you're in IT, you can work as well at home on your laptop as you do in the office. There is no advantage of being in the office. But if you're on an assembly line, okay, if you're putting cars together and you've just lost your job with Ford, chances are you're not going to get employed again for the next 12 months. So there's different pressures on different people. And look, the most important thing to understand, if you look at history and you look at all the different market events, if you like, that have occurred, you had the Black Monday stock market crash of 87, massive crash. What happened at the end? 23% growth. I mean, it was unprecedented. It went up to 30%. Then we had the famous recession we had to have, followed by very consistent growth. In the 90s, it was pretty much a slow market, but it was pretty consistent. Then we had the Asian financial crisis, once again followed by a property boom. The dot-com bubble bursting, once again, massive boom. Then we had the GFC, 2008, 2010, massive decline, followed by massive boom. Then we had the China steel glut, so we had the commodity sector suffer. China was stockpiling steel and then they stopped buying steel. And once again, we now have gone into the bottom of the market and we're about to go to a boom as well. So once again, when this passes, we're going to go into a massive property boom. Now think about this. In December 2019, we were at 8 o'clock on the property clock, 12 being the peak of the market. We got up to 8 o'clock and then we had to pause the economy for 12 months with the coronavirus. When the economy's restarted again, because it hasn't failed, we've just put it on pause, I believe things will go back to norm very quickly. Like if you're a cafe owner in Hampton, let's say you've got your business, you've got equity in your property, you're just at home, your cafe's there in Hampton, it's empty. If you were to open it tomorrow, it'll be chock-a-block with people, right? You could pretty much go back to norm the next day. So when we restart the economy, a lot of businesses are going to start like nothing happened. Yes, some won't make it, which is unfortunate. Some will go into, administration, involuntary administration. Some will go bankrupt. Some people will lose everything. But I'm saying majority of businesses will just go back to norm. So I think the recovery of what's happening this time compared to the GFC, where during the GFC, things actually broke down. The economy stopped working. Okay, if you're looking at a car analogy, which I love my cars, during the GFC, the engine broke and we had to fix it. Now, the engine's working fine. We just turned the ignition off, okay? We had to just pull over and stop the car until this thing passes by. There's going to be a massive boom let's say, for example, this takes to the end of the year or even 2021. By 2022, we're way behind it. In 2 years from now, you'll be looking back and the market's going up again because we have 100,000 people moving to Melbourne who want to live here for all the reasons why people move to Melbourne. So if you look at the areas that have been really affected, where portion of trade businesses that have reduced staff in the last 2 weeks, so healthcare and social assistance 44%, retail trade 37%, professional, scientific and technical service only 20%. So professional being banking, financial services sector, science and technology. Construction 23%, food and accommodation 70%. So this is the area that you want to avoid. You want to avoid suburbs where a lot of people work in accommodation or hospitality, and you want to focus on suburbs where predominantly they have, especially professional, scientific and technical trades. Wealthy people that are making good money because they tend to have buffers as well. Also, these people have no money left over at the end of each pay cycle, where people in high incomes tend to have either equity in their home, which they can access, or they've got more savings. The average Australian has something like $5,000 in savings, but I can tell you now, if you really break that down further, a lot of people working in cafes and gyms would probably have $2,000 or $3,000 in their bank account at any one time, where there's a lot of people working as architects, accountants, for example, doctors, that might have $200,000, $300,000 in term deposit or $50,000 in cash and the rest locked up in equity in their home. So you want to be looking at, from an investment perspective, where is the stability right now in the market? Which sectors are more stable than others? So once again, it comes down to the highest concentration of labour force employed in food and accommodation. And these are the areas that I would definitely avoid to invest in. I wouldn't touch these areas right now if you're entering the market. If you've already got property there, the fundamentals could be fine. You just have to do not sell your property right now because you'd be crazy. Do whatever it takes to hold through this period of time. And if you're going to sell at the peak of the market. What suburbs and income demographics to target in Melbourne? Well, I would target the highest income demographics in Melbourne. So if you look at the median household income weekly, Park Orchards, $2,660 per week, plenty. Richmond, $2,537. In Ivanhoe East, $2,500. Wonga Park, Canterbury, Waterways, Kangaroo Ground, Bryden and Warrnambool. I look at also individual incomes. If you look at Richmond, has the highest income in Melbourne, which is Cremorne, by the way, it's the same suburb, $2,500 per week. The average income in Melbourne is $674 per week. Okay, so if you add up all the suburbs together, $674 versus $2,500. East Melbourne, Port Melbourne, Middle Park, Toorak, Elwood, Albert Park, St Kilda West, Clifton Hill, South Yarra. So you want to be targeting people that have the highest income in the suburb and then buy properties in that suburb. Now, yeah, you might not be able to buy a detached house in the suburb, but you can definitely get a townhouse or an apartment. You can definitely get something that you can refurbish. But you're minimising the risk of people in that area losing jobs, because these people tend to have white-collar jobs with high incomes, with high buffers, compared to blue-collar jobs, which are being affected the most right now in this crisis. Property prices will definitely shoot up after this pandemic is over because it always has historically happened. The stock market gets smashed and the properties will boom because of record immigration into Melbourne, 100,000 people coming to Melbourne every year, a lot of wealthy people coming to Melbourne, and there's virtually no stock on the market. If you look at the volume of supply in the top areas, people have taken properties completely off the market. And this is also the difference between different segments of the Melbourne property market, which I'll talk to you about. The areas that are going to be impacted the most right now are the so-called growth corridors around Melbourne. So your Truganina, Tarneets, your Point Cooks, your Melton, I wouldn't touch it at all. It's going to be completely decimated because it's all blue-collar workers with the lowest incomes. Definitely the north, so your South Marangs and Roxborough Parks, and then your Pakenham and Berwick's as well. These people have very highly leveraged. They've borrowed 95% to buy their first home usually, or they have no equity in that property. Once they buy their home, they usually go to Harvey Norman and get interest-free furniture and plasma screens for 5 or 10 years for GE Finance. By the way, when the 5-year period expires, it goes to 23% interest rate. Then they buy their cars on leases. They buy 2 brand new cars, a jet ski, they go to Queensland. Let me tell you, there's no buffer there. These people are living from paycheck to paycheck. So these are the highest risk categories right now based on an investment perspective, because you want to be safe during this period of time. You want to have a property where your tenant hasn't lost their job and is unlikely to default on the rental and the mortgage repayments. Also, if you're an investor here and you have already 300-400 houses on Point Cook on the market, suddenly it's going to go to 500. Mortgage stress, by the way, and the definition of mortgage stress is 90 days in arrears with a loan repayment, which means if you miss 3 repayments on your mortgage, the banks can technically repossess your house. These areas here have mortgage stress ranging between 20 to 30% right now. I believe it can go as high as 40%, which means people won't be able to cope, they won't be able to pay their mortgage, and eventually some of them will unfortunately lose their house, which is terrible, and the house will be put on the market fire sold, which means the price ceiling will be diminished and it will drag down the median price for the suburb, but also it creates a lower sale price for your property. If you look at an area like Balmoral, for example, at the moment Balmoral has 0 mortgage stress, which means everyone that has a mortgage in Balmoral has paid their mortgage on time and they're not even 1 month behind. So different areas have a different clustering of demographics, different industries, different risk profile. And this is why I'm educating you guys on this in Melbourne, because you've got to be aware there is no such thing as the Melbourne property market. Forget that word. You've got to completely eliminate that out of your vocabulary. It doesn't exist. It's like saying the global property market. What does it mean? You know? So you've got to make sure you understand the clustering is very significant and fragmentation of the market. These are the areas, the red areas have the highest risk of unemployment, and the blue areas have the lowest risk of unemployment. So if you're starting out, if you want to buy deals now, go into these areas, okay? Now, these areas will also have bargains right now. There are people that are going to be defaulting in these areas. Absolutely. Not everyone's immune in these suburbs. Not everyone's immune in Brighton. There's going to be someone losing their house because they've highly geared into their business, or they've made the wrong decisions, or they've made other bad investment decisions. And this is the time where you've got to stick to the fundamentals, i.e. blue chip areas, and then go in hard and negotiate. And this is the time to buy, but you've got to know exactly what to buy. That's the key. So I would stay away from these areas. Now, some of you will say, but Konrad, if these areas are diminishing in value, isn't it a good time to get a bargain? No, because you don't know how low the floor is, and you might find there's a basement to it as well. So imagine you buy a house that was sold for 600 last year in Point Cook, you pay 550, and then you realise next year it's worth 450. You've just lost so much time and opportunity cost. So no, don't buy things that are distressed. Buy distressed things that are quality. Because remember, stick to the fundamentals. They've never changed, okay? Eastern suburbs and the Bayside, always good areas to invest in. It's always where the money is in Melbourne. Stick to long-term fundamentals. Mont Albert, Borland North, Middle Park, Ashburton, Borland, Glenlavery, Doncaster, Mount Over, St Kilda West, North, doesn't matter, Box Hill South, Deepin, Camberwell, Blackburn, Surrey Hills, McKinnon. All these areas have averaged 10% growth over the last 10 years up to November 2017, the last property cycle. Nothing will change, guys. Nothing will change. They're going to go back to their norm. The areas that I mentioned before in the so-called growth corridors, they're always underperforming long-term, even when the economy is doing well. So when the economy goes into a crisis, these are the worst areas to target as an investment vehicle. Forget your house and land packages. Forget them, guys, in Melbourne. And forget about apartments. I mean, apartments, unless it's an established apartment or it's a blue chip development, and I've got a whole YouTube video on apartments where there's like 10 or 15 or 20 in Caulfield or Elsternwick, that's cool. But high density, forget it. I mean, it's a disaster. You're going to see a massive oversupply. Plus, a lot of foreigners that have bought those properties, especially Chinese investors, they're all defaulting now. There's a massive glut of these properties on the market because no one can settle. Remember, the Australian impending property boom is coming. The average cost of a home will surge to 6.3 million in 25 years from now. If it doesn't, in 25 years from now, you can find this YouTube video and sue me. I'm 43, I'll be 68. Who? I'll be like, who? Never heard of him. And it's not Sydney that we hit the hardest, it's Melbourne. Melbourne's going to go through the roof because we can still grow. Sydney is geographically landlocked from every direction. The average homes in Australia may cost up to 6.3 million in 25 years. A bombshell study has revealed. This is from Aussie Home Loans. Projections show the median house price will reach the figure in Sydney by 2043, up from 1,030,000 today. Aussie Home Loans and CoreLogic RP Data, which are really that's the authority on the housing market in Australia as far as I'm concerned, surveys predict the average price will hit 5.8 million in Melbourne, 2.9 million in Canberra, 2.5 million in Perth, and 2.3 million in Brisbane. Adelaide, who cares, right? But imagine that happened at 5.8 million in Melbourne and it's currently 880,000. What are you going to do to get your slice of the action? That's the question you've got to ask yourself. What are you going to do right now to make sure that you secure as many properties, because over the next 23 years, they're going to go from 1 million to 5.8 million. I mean, it's crazy money, you know? And if you go back in time, Bentley, 20 years ago, houses were 180,000. Now, 1.5 million. That's the reality. Well, wages will also increase over time, but with Australia enduring one of the lowest wage growths in the world, the prospect of housing becoming less affordable is very real. People are getting priced out of the market. Wages are going to stagnate, which means you've got to go for areas where wages keep going up, which is white-collar professionals, business owners. And this is the reality. You know, house value by 2043, 23 years from now, Sydney 6.3 million for a median for a house. I mean, that's nothing for some suburbs in Sydney, but I'm saying the median price. Perth, 2.4. Melbourne, 5.8. Hobart, 2.2. Darwin, 2.2 million. Canberra, 2.9. Brisbane, 2.3. And the national average, 2.9. Who cares about Adelaide? And this is amazing stuff. So think about buying real estate and investing is like playing Monopoly. It's a long-term game. It takes a long time to play a Monopoly game, usually half the day, if you're playing with 4 people. And the thing about it is, when you go around, first you learn all the rules. And then whatever you land on, you pretty much end up buying. But you've got to be more discerning than that, because it's about building wealth in Monopoly, and winning the game is about controlling Mayfair and Park Lane, right? And getting a hotel, commercial property. Because you know when someone lands there, they're going to be paying you $1,600. Pretty much you land a couple of times, you're out of the game, right? Which always makes me think, why do people think they can get rich buying Old Kent Road? No one cares about Old Kent Road. You got a hotel there, it's like $60. Who cares? So that's why you can't get rich buying cheap properties. There's a saying in real estate, cheap today, cheap tomorrow. There's a reason why it's cheap. It hasn't got the fundamentals. And remember, this whole thing is about money. It's not about money for the sake of money, for buying things. It's about money so you can have security in your life and spend more time with your family and friends and less time at work. It's about getting your time back. See, people say, oh, I'm not about money. Or I am all about money. Money to me means less time at work, more time with my 9-year-old daughter and my wife on holidays. I'm all about money because money buys me time. That's what money does for me. It's not about buying cars or stuff. I'm not into stuff. I'm into experiences and time. And that's why I have 6 holidays per year. And that's why we rent houses in destinations for $2,500 per night, because you can't get that time back. Once you're older, you look back and that's the best money you've ever spent. I'll tell you honestly, I've blown a lot of money on cars and I've always regretted it. I mean, I've wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars on cars. I've bought cars for $180,000, I've traded them for 60. I'm going, gee, I just blew $130,000. One thing I've never regretted in my life is spending money on holidays with my family and friends, being away in exotic destinations, in hotels, and hanging out all day when you're that young. You can only have that time once. And once that time passes you by, it's gone forever. Think about your kids. I mean, I remember my daughter was born, now she's 9. Soon she'll be 18, she'll be gone. You know, you've only got them for a short period of time, and most people miss out on that time because they spend all the time working, you know, and they miss out on seeing their kids grow up. Property gives you back control. Property gives you that ability to get your time back. So you don't have to miss out. So you can be there to watch the play. You can be there, watch them enter that competition or go to that sporting event. You know, and that's what property does for me. It's not about just buying stuff. It's about me always being with her at school, seeing her perform, seeing her doing sporting events, all that kind of stuff. And remember, imagine playing a game of Monopoly and trying to win just by going around the board, only getting money and passing go. That's what you do when you only collect a paycheck and don't invest in real estate. You can't win the game of life by not having real estate. Just like you can't win the game of Monopoly without having real estate. The smartest investors right now are going in hard, negotiating and buying assets where the fundamentals haven't changed, because they have acquired the skills and knowledge to identify the fundamentals of an asset. People that haven't taken the time to educate themselves because they're too busy watching Married at First Sight with a bowl of Maltesers, now are scared shitless. And you should be scared because you got the knowledge. So if you're paralyzed right now, and it's one of the best opportunities that I've seen in the last decade, well, since the GFC, and I've got distressed stock right now, 100 below market. I've got the people falling over on deposits, not my clients, other clients, and I've got those properties now 10%, 20% below market. My clients are going in hard. I'm negotiating, I'm buying properties myself. This is when it's exciting. And the only person that's in control of whether you act or not, or whether you sit on the sidelines, is you. Ultimately, you're going to make your own decision, and your indecision to act is as consequential as the wrong decision. Sitting on the sidelines not buying properties is as bad as if you sat on the sidelines in 2008 during the GFC. Any townhouse in Bentley during the GFC that you've purchased for $600,000 is worth now 1.2, 1.3. They've more than doubled, and some have quadrupled. Some properties in Bentley have gone from, houses going from 600 to 1.8 million. There are houses that I own since 2008 that I have purchased that I've made $1 million in growth. $1 million, guys, for doing nothing, just having an old house on a big block sitting in an average suburb. I haven't done any work on it. Old 1950s houses. And I've made $1 million just sitting on my ass doing nothing. If you just do that once, how much security can you have? I mean, it's crazy. You know, it's crazy. So developers are going in hard now, buying up blocks of land, buying up subdivisions from people that have fallen over. I'm negotiating hard. A lot of people are scared. This is the time to take advantage of that. Remember, this too shall pass. And 2 years from now, mark my words, 2 years from now, 2022, the corona will be a distant memory. Market would have gone up again. All the so-called experts and doom and gloomers like Harry Deans of the world will be wrong again for the 15th time, prophesizing Armageddon. And the property market would have gone up again, and then it's the wrong time to buy, because you don't want to be buying properties at the peak. You want to be buying at the lowest point. Remember, the greatest transfer of wealth occurs at the bottom of the market, but it's a transfer of wealth that occurs between the uneducated and the educated. The educated win, the uneducated lose opportunity and time because they procrastinate, because they come from a place of lack of knowledge. So it's up to you to get the knowledge, and I want to thank you for watching this video to the very end. And even though I do live events, I do one live event in Melbourne in my office here every month. I've obviously have stopped doing them because I have to be in isolation like everyone else. But what I've done is 3 weeks ago, I've actually recorded the last 2-day event for you guys, and I'm going to release that to my database in the next couple of weeks. We're just doing the editing process on that home study. So if you're interested in learning more, number one, I'm going to give you a recording video of my last real estate fast track weekend. So definitely subscribe to my database, contact us, they'll be coming out in a couple of weeks, and that's 13 hours of contents, and you get a 265-page manual. Also, if you want to come to a live event, which eventually we'll start doing them, all you got to do is register your interest on realestatefasttrack.com.au, and this is where we spend 2 days in the office here in St Kilda educating clients on the property market. Day one is all about property due diligence and finance, mainly about finance and structuring your property portfolio, and day two, we put you on the bus and we drive around Melbourne and we actually look at suburbs. So it's a very much a practical, hands-on, where to invest, when not to invest covered event. Also, remember the difference between you today and a year from now is the books that you read and the people that you meet. This is the time to read, especially for those of you guys who are sitting at home. Get off the computer, don't play computer games, don't watch TV, read books. Think and Grow Rich, As a Man Thinketh, Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant. And once you get the psychology part of it, start reading books written by Australian investors for Australians. And I've written this book, which is, you can get it on Amazon, you can buy it on Book on Finance, on how to smash your mortgage in record time and how to use the savings to build up a massive property empire. It's $30, guys. It's the best money you can spend. Also, you'll get a copy of my home study for free, which is valued at $497. And the way to get that is just to go to, it's very easy to use, it's instant access. You go in, you just click and point and play and literally download the manual. It's 13 hours of contents, and this is the actual URL there. We're going to make it realestatedvd.com.au, absolutely free access. 2020 will be the link, and there's a link below this video for you to go down and click. And definitely you get access to that home study once it's live in a couple of weeks from now. And you also get a 265-page manual which follows that 13 hours of contents. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. This is Konrad Bobilak, and I'll see you on the inside.